It is important to understand that when we go through all this analogy of the different places of pressure or uneasiness within our physical sense of self, we understand that comes out of an innocent misunderstanding, again, as a sense of the idea of postural alignment that we come from, because we have not really understood balance as being the motion of our lives. So we think the balance is actually a form of well posture or good sense of physical sense of self. So I will go a little bit farther to explain the places in which we may experience pain in order to understand how easy it can be released as we begin to understand the release of the spinal column. Returning to this symbol, many people that innocently are in a sense of compression, they experience themselves as being in a state of overweight or having a feeling that I'm not as skinny or as fit as we think that we could be. And sometimes we are not understanding that the reason that we are overweight or that we are experiencing ourselves as overweight is many times due to the way that we move. In which case, the actual movement that we are creating in a space gets concentrated in the physical body because it's self-enclosed inside of its own system. And when that occurs, we are creating form all the time. Apart from that too, when things becomes painful, like in this particular situation will be the lower back, that pain becomes like a mystery. Because we do not understand sometimes that the pain in one particular sense, in this particular place in the lower back, is relating to a placement in the center of the spine, perhaps in the thoracic area, or in the neck and the head. So another way of saying that the places that we experience pain is not necessarily the cause. Sometimes it's the effect. The point of pain becomes the effect of the way in which the whole body moves in a space. Because of that, I said that before, the spine is a mystery, and we think that that's the way we are, that it's very difficult to repair it. Sometimes we think we have to have surgery, sometimes we have to do many things to try to release the pain. But in this particular formation, for example, if it is pain in the lower back, the releasing of the upper torso and the releasing of the shoulders and the releasing of the upper vertebrae will release the pressure. Another form of saying the spiral nature of the spinal column becomes released when it is concentrated in the lower back by allowing it to experience itself all the different planes that exist in self-equilibrium. Apart from that, when the spine takes a formation of compression, it doesn't occur only in the spine. The hips, it goes out of alignment, and then the centralization of the hip goes slanted, and it goes to an edge of the hip. And then the knees and the ankles follow that formation. So sometimes when our feet hurt, or we think our arches are falling, or the hips begins to create friction, we think that it's in the hip. But in reality, it's in the whole of the upper area of the torso that innocently is converging and allowing gravity to express more weight and more friction upon the joints themselves. So as we begin to free the body from this formation of compression, of formations of opposition, then what we have within ourselves is that all the joints return to the level of centering, the hips return to centering, everything returns to a formation that allows for gravity and expansion to be one, because that is the way that is united in all things. It's not an external idea of motion, it's actually coming into correspondence with the motion of balance. Continuing with our analogy of balance, we started in the beginning introducing balance as being not only our sense of physical self, but also our connection to the planet Earth, our connection to the solar system, our connection to the universe. I would like to go further into explaining what does it mean to be connected to the planet Earth or connecting to the solar system as in our sense of three-dimensionality. So in that, we're going to go to this graphic that it shows the electromagnetic field of the planet. The electromagnetic field of the planet, we call it in Unity in Motion, the fountain of life. And all the movements are unity in motion that allow us to become present with three dimensions is actually interconnecting allowing us to be interconnected to the electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field, we call it a fountain of life. It's because it is continuously merging into the center of the planet, passing through the center. At the same time, that is keep appearing recurring into itself. It's like an inner engine that is constantly going, every single instant. And it's a field of energy that allows the planet to exist in a space at 0 point weight. And it's the field of energy from which we experience 3 dimensions. Now, the field of gravity, the field of the electromagnetic field of the planet is so vast that it's almost like impossible for us to really comprehend it or really actually know how to use it. But in Unity in Motion, we begin to understand it and experience as we begin to bring ourselves into 3 dimensions. The electromagnetic field of the planet is what allows us then to centralize ourselves in equilibrium. And the centralization of ourselves in equilibrium, as we said earlier, is actually the centralization of gravity and expansion, in which the central line becomes the communion with the fountain, that always coming in and always going out. And this communion with the fountain is the 3-dimensional nature of our sense of self and what we call the geometry of balance. Because the electromagnetic field is so vast and so enormous that it's almost impossible for us to perceive it. The way we are experiencing and perceiving the electromagnetic field is through the geometry of balance. The geometry of balance are the planes and directions existing in 3-dimensional space that allow us to experience the centralization of the skeleton and the expansion of the skeleton, on our skeletal self in motion. Inside of the sea of movement then are all the planes that allow us to experience what we call the metrics of balance. The metrics of balance, as we said earlier, is the tensional forces existing within our skeletal sense of self that allow us to centralize ourselves in a space and be suspended by this field of movement that is constantly existing as the fountain of life. Inside of this field then is the centralization of our sense of self, is our sense of spatial awareness, is our sense of energy or feeling or the emotion that we call our sense of life, and then the sense of physicality in which our skeletal self and our actual physical body becomes not only grounded but at the same time expanded in 3-dimensional space. This formation that we call the integration between a space, energy and form is the metrics of balance, and is what allows us then to be not only centralized in a space, but to experience a sense of unity within the many aspects that we call our human sense of self. Inside of the sense of unity, the metrics is the vertical extension, which is the top of the head and top of the atlas, interconnect us with equilibrium. The right and the left side, in which the head is balanced and top of the atlas, expressing the balanced interaction within our brain. The sense of centralization of the neck as it is extended in relation of the head and shoulders. The centralization of shoulders and arms, centralized at the heart. The centralization of the solar plexus, which is the centralization of our spinal column. And the life force from which we experience the centralization of our nervous system, the solar plexus. And then the right and the left of the hip and the pelvic floor. These formations inside of our own sense of self then is a correspondence to the geometry and to the electromagnetic field from which we experience not only our sense of suspension, but also our sense of dynamic connection to ourselves, to life, and everything that surrounds us. This formation of the metrics of balance is where we're going to explore in the movements that is called Unity in Motion, because the movements of Unity in Motion are all constantly and existing, constantly existing inside of this matrix. And as we begin to integrate the matrix of balance within our sense of self, we are beginning to repair any sense of imbalance or any sense of formation within the skeleton that have created a sense of compression or a sense of opposition or a sense of discomfort within our sense of being. So let's go back now then to the beginning of the study of Unity in Motion. Thank you.